I came home from work one day and Brad Paisley had left a message on my machine. And again, I didn't have a cell phone yet, so I just had a landline with an answering machine. Probably hadn't talked since like 98 or something like that. This is 2002 at this point. He has 2 albums out at this point. I call him back and he says, look, I've had enough success now where I can hire my first guitar tech. And I told him, I said, I don't know how to do that. I mean, I know how to take care of my own stuff, but I've never been a guitar tech. And then he said, look, at least check it out for a weekend. So he got me a plane ticket, and I flew out of Houston, and it was a show where Brad was opening for Toby Keith. And of course, I had only toured in a van with a trailer behind it, carrying our own PA and backline and everything. And so all of a sudden, you got an 18-wheeler and you've got 2 buses. Those are $500,000 buses with nice bunks and good AC and a restroom and everything like that. And so, and they had catering at the gigs and everything, and it was like pretty decent. And
Yeah.
so I got sucked in, and
Yeah.
in the best way.
Welcome everybody back to the next episode here of the Studio 101 Recording Podcast. Our episode today, we have my friend, Mr. Zac Childs. Zac, thank you so much for jumping in. Honored to have you on this episode of the Studio 101 Podcast, man.
Well, I appreciate you asking me, Brad. It was nice to hear your to get your text and to get to hear your voice again. So yeah, my pleasure.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Always great talking with you, Zac. And just a little backstory on the connection between you and I. Both of us were at Belmont University at the same time. Somewhere around 94 to 98, 99-ish. Both of us were there at Belmont University. Zac is an incredible guitar player. He's a super knowledgeable dude about all things guitar. Zac is the host of the video series Ask Zack, which we're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. But but Zac and I go a long way back to the Belmont days. Man, those were some good days, and it's so funny looking back. Like, I don't think any of us knew what we were doing. We were just we were having a blast playing music, hanging out in the studio, playing live, all the things, man. What is your take about your Belmont experience in those days when you were there, man?
Well, I think I have children that are 13 and 15, and so college and stuff is on the brain right now because I'm thinking about my 15-year-old son, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking about my college experience versus what other people's college experience has been probably since we graduated. The college experience has changed because it's
Yeah.
so much. I mean, Belmont was expensive back then, but it's so much more expensive now. I mean, if you taking inflation into account, it's the cost of going to Belmont has gone up so much. I mean, it's amazingly expensive. And so I think what I think about is just how we got to be at Belmont when kind of during a little bit of a golden age
Yeah.
because it was the 90s, that was the zenith of the country music, machine and its popularity
Yeah.
and money making. And we
Yeah.
were able to be at a school that was really, that like Dr. Malloy and other people had really kind of honed it down to where it was really a serious music business school. And so what I think about is I think about just how beneficial Belmont was to me. It's like every relationship that I have, every job that I've had, I mean, not all, well, I mean, everything that I've done in the music industry has been because of Belmont and the friendships and connections I made. And it wasn't like,
Sure.
most of us weren't out there, hey, I'm going to go make some connections and I'm going to,
Yeah.
it was
Right.
just, the friendships that you make with people were like-minded. It's
Hmm.
like our friend Brad Paisley. I mean, it was like, we were
Yeah.
both guitar nerds and we were into the same stuff. Or,
Yeah.
all these other people that have, they're in gospel groups or Christian bands or country bands and that are guys in management and all this stuff. It's like they were all just friends. And
Yeah.
so it's nice when you see all these people that have kind of risen up through the ranks, and it's like Cindy Mabe, running one of the
Mhm.
labels and, all those kind of things. So I just think about how fortunate we were to be in Nashville at Belmont uh, during that period of time.
Yeah, yeah.
That sounds a little maybe that's a little grandiose but yeah, I feel fortunate to have been there when all that was happening and to be there when those people were there. And I had a lot of fun while I was there. I didn't like college before Belmont. I transferred in and
Yeah.
I was a terrible student, and I would drop classes so I could play gigs down in Texas. And it was my dad that we had what we affectionately in the South call a come to Jesus moment, and
Hmm.
where I was dropping classes and playing gigs, 3 or 4 times a week, and my dad said, you've got to find some kind of degree plan or something like that you're actually gonna be serious about. And so I found
Yeah.
Belmont in it was a reference book at the library, because this is
Whoa.
before the internet. And
Yeah.
so it was this huge reference book that listed all the universities in the United States and all the degree plans. And so I saw that Belmont had a music business, had a commercial music and a music business program, and I said one of those will be a fit. We
Yeah.
came up, checked it out, and that's how I ended up there. And then, yeah. So I know that's a long way around, but I hope that answered your question.
No, that's great. I did not really realize that you found Belmont that way and arrived at school that way, man. That's really cool to hear, But I echo kind of what you said in the fact that, well, Ben Phillips and I talked about this the other day. Ben is a mutual friend of Zach and,
Yeah,
and myself, and we talked about the very fact that we were kind of in Nashville in a sort of golden age time, like one of the best times to be in town. And all of the people that were there with us at school or were living in town at the time, man, man, there's so many names we could name about people who were influential even now in the how the music industry works. And it was just,
yes,
I don't know, it was just a super great time to be there. And I truly treasure all the people that I was able to
yeah,
meet and still have relationships with. And, in the music industry, audio recording and in the guitar world, all the stuff is, when you have those natural networking connections that you meet the people and you resonate with them, keeping those relationships going over the years has been really, really awesome.
yeah.
So, after you finish Belmont, kind of give everybody a 30,000 foot view of like what was the next thing you went to after graduation from Belmont, after leaving Belmont, kind of what was the
Yeah.
next thing that you went into?
So after Belmont, at the tail end of Belmont, I had and this is not to be any kind of Debbie Downer. This is just kind of what happened. So I had a cousin that lived with us for a while, and he was kind of like a brother to me, and he died in a car accident like right before
Mm,
graduation. And I kind of went into this deep, dark funk because it was like I'd never had anyone close to me die, and especially not someone my own age, and that I was so close to, and it meant a lot to me. And I uh, I moved. I got an apartment with some other guitar players and out in Bellevue, and I was
mm.
just kind of in this weird funk where I was running out of money, and
Yeah, that
because
sounds
yeah,
typical.
yeah, and all of a sudden, a friend of mine that I'd done some like demo sessions with, he called me up and he said that he and his wife were going to play. They were playing like bar gigs around the U.S. Usually playing like 5 or 6 nights at a bar. Like 4 or 5 hours a night. And
Yeah,
did I want to go? And so this was like on a Saturday evening, and we were going to leave on Monday, and we were going to be gone for a month. And I didn't have like extra strings or anything, and
yeah.
so literally, and we didn't have a rehearsal. I mean, we drove up to Rawlings, Wyoming, which
Oh my
is
gosh,
probably at least a 20 to 25 hour drive from
man.
Nashville. We
Yeah.
deadheaded it out there, and then we had to play 4 hours that night.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
unreal.
yeah, and it was just a bizarre, thing where we were, basically pulling songs out of our butt. I would play, these long blues tunes, at the beginning, at the end of every set, just to stretch things out while we learned more songs during the week. And
Yeah.
the gal that was fronting the band, um, she was way, because Shania Twain was really hot at the time, because this
Hmm.
was like '96, and
Yeah.
so we we were learning all the Shania tunes and playing those, even though we were a little four-piece band.
Yeah.
And anyway, yeah, I did that for a while, and then that gig kind of fell apart. It was one of those things where everyone got tired of each other because we were, the husband and wife, of course, had their own hotel room, but then it was like, three to a room for the band guys, and we were eating, flat meat and the cheapest white bread and the cheapest meat, because we didn't have money. We were getting paid next to nothing, so we're living out of ice chests. We're staying in
Mm.
hotel rooms that don't have like a kitchenette or anything, or even a microwave most of the time,
Yeah.
and so we're eating cereal, and we're making cheap, salami sandwiches or bologna sandwiches, and
Yeah.
after doing that for like months and months, we just all the band just kind of imploded and everyone went their own way. And I had started kind of getting where I was playing on some demo sessions, like low level songwriter demo things,
Yeah.
overdubbing some electric guitar. I'd also started playing like some. Again, there was so much work in Nashville that I was getting to do like some artist showcases, people trying to get
Hmm.
deals where, or people that had developmental deals where the publishing
Yeah.
company was paying for the songwriter to have a band. I remember playing with this one guy that we rehearsed for months and never played a gig. It was, because
Wow.
that was kind of the way some of these things went, where it's like you show up to SIR or sound check or whatever it was, and you would rehearse, you know, week
Yep.
after week. You do like one or two rehearsals a week, and you keep doing it, and then they keep talking about gigs. They keep
Yeah.
talking about, oh, I think we're going to get to play the Opry, or we might play this,
Hmm.
or so it was that kind of thing. And after about, also I ended up working at a gospel record label just in the warehouse. Like I was just like packing orders, and it was
Was
like I was.
where
Go
where
ahead.
was that? Homeland? Where was that?
Yeah, that was
Which
Homeland
label?
Entertainment.
Homeland. So that's hilarious. Did you work for Eddie? Did you work
Yes,
with Eddie? That's
yes,
hilarious. So I must have came in after you because
yes.
when I finished, I think I was the next guy in line.
Okay,
That's
yeah,
fantastic.
that is hilarious because yeah, Eddie was who he still, I think he still drums with the Whites,
Yeah.
and he's a great drummer, great guy. He was great to
Hmm.
work for.
Sure. Yeah.
Unfortunately, the owner at Homeland, he was an interesting cat, and
Yeah.
I had three paychecks bounce, and the guy was driving a different high end car. So I mean, he'd drive a Porsche one day, then he had a
Yeah.
BMW, then he had a Ferrari. It's like every
Hmm.
every day he drove a different like high end car, and then
Yeah.
and we couldn't order stuff. We had to prepay everything because the Homeland had such bad credit with everybody.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I
It,
did.
that's
Yeah,
hilarious.
yeah. So I did that for a while, and then finally, I just got burned out. I was completely, I was just done, and I was probably on the cusp of maybe some good things happening, but I just kind of gave up, and I said I'm out of here, and so I left Nashville. I ended up living in Paris, France for a year, and I went to school there some, and I actually did a little bit of gigging and stuff in Europe,
Yeah.
and then a friend of mine, a friend of ours, he called me up and he said, "Hey, this band that you helped start years ago, we're on the cusp of a deal, of getting the deal and everything. You need to come back." And so Ben Phillips was playing drums, and and so I'm purposely not naming names on this too much, but it ended up just not going anywhere because
Mhm.
they were just they had I had tried to get this band to play gigs and they wouldn't. and they just kept trying to rehearse and meet with their manager. So it wasn't happening. So I came back to
Yeah.
Nashville briefly, and I worked as a waiter for a little while at Macaroni Grill and
Mm.
hated that. Ended up doing temp work. Worked at conventions at Opryland Hotel. I was one of the guys giving you your packet and stuff like
Yeah.
that when you went to the Opryland Hotel for a convention. This is like the year 2000, and
Mm.
finally I was just like, I hate this. So for the second time, I left Nashville and I was like, I am never coming back. I hate this place. I
Yeah.
hate this place.
Yeah.
And so I moved to Pasadena, Texas, because I got a job with one of my dad's friends because I was basically unemployable because I had I had a business degree, but the only experience I had, over the last couple of years was, playing music and, working some odd jobs and living in France for a year. So, I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
so someone had to take a chance on me because I was,
Yeah.
I was not the star, uh, hire. So, so this guy named Jim Tice, he hired me. He's a friend of my dad's, and he basically taught me how to be an employee and how to actually manage myself and how to not just sit there and do what I'm told, but to actually see things. Oh, this needs to be done. Maybe you need to get approval first, but you at least pitch stuff to your boss where it's like,
Hmm.
hey, I'm done with my other tasks. This needs to be done. Can I go ahead and take that on? Or what, just kind of how to basically, instead of being someone that does what they're told, and then when they're done with that, they start playing solitaire.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
anyway, I did that for a while. And then I came home from work one day and Brad Paisley had left a message on my machine. Again, I didn't have a cell phone yet, so I just had a landline with an answering machine. And he gave me, it was his number, and said to call him back. And so I called him back and we talked, and we hadn't talked in a couple of years. I think we hadn't talked since like 98 or something like that. So
Wow.
this is 2002 at this point.
Yeah.
And he has two albums out at this point, and he's having a lot of success. There's
Yeah.
like ads in guitar player magazines with him in it. Like, I think there was like a Larrivee ad or something like that.
Yeah.
But he was successful, and so I call him back, and he says, "Look, I have enough. I've had enough success now where I can hire my first guitar tech. First
Mm.
real guitar tech." He said, like the bus driver or the bass player in the band have kind of been taking care of me. Uh, but I really need to have a real guitar tech that's like helping me during the show and stuff like that, and helping set up stuff and take care of things. And I told him, I said, I don't know how to do that. I mean, I know how to take care of my own stuff, but I've never been a guitar tech. And also at that point, I was making, decent money down there. And also I was playing down in the Houston area. I was playing, uh, 3 and 4 nights a week and working a full-time job. So, I mean,
Hmm.
I was really busy. And, and I really enjoyed playing. And I knew that
Yeah.
being a guitar tech, there wouldn't be, much guitar playing involved, a lot of guitar handling, but not much playing.
Yeah.
So I told him no. And then he said, look, uh, you know, I'll fly you up and you at least check it out for a weekend. So he got me a plane ticket, and I flew out of Houston to I can't remember if it was probably like Louisville, Kentucky, or something like that. And it was a
Hmm.
show where Brad was opening for Toby Keith, and they picked me up at the airport, took me straight there, and they take me onto Brad's bus, and on the back of the bus, it's Brad and Kimberly Williams, and who I just knew her from Father of the Bride. It's like, here's Brad with this movie star, and then he tells me that they had just gotten engaged to be married, and so it was just kind of this whole like weird
Yeah.
thing. And then I checked it out, and of course, I had only toured in a van with a trailer behind it, carrying our own
Hmm.
PA and backline and everything. And so all of a sudden, you got an 18 wheeler and you've got two buses. Those are $500,000 buses with nice bunks and good AC and a restroom and everything like that. And so, and they had catering at the gigs and everything, and it was like pretty decent. And
Yeah.
so I got sucked in,
Yeah.
and in the best way.
Yeah.
And because it was like I wanted to be a part of that, but it was like I hadn't been able to. I didn't want to really be a guitar tech, but um, so I ended up saying yes, and
Mhm.
of course, had to quickly move to Nashville. I moved in with our friend Ben Phillips. I lived in his basement,
Wow.
and yeah, and basically was gone all the time. I wasn't really
Yeah.
home
Yeah.
because Brad had started doing the CMT tour where it was, where they had one of the CMT VJs, you know, introducing all the acts, and
Yeah.
because there were like three or four opening acts on the show, and Brad was the headliner.
Right.
So I did that, and it was a trial by fire because, of course, I had no idea how to be a guitar tech. I knew how to take care of my own stuff, but all of a sudden, here's a much more complicated rig. You've got a switching
Hmm.
system that's switching amps and switching effects. You've got like things that are programmable. You've got, you know, amps that are being turned up really loud and pushed really hard. Because I was always more of a Fender guy, and I
Hmm.
kind of played clean. And so, to run the amp at 3 or 5 is very different than having amps that are being run on 7 or 8 every night.
Yeah.
And so he
Uh-huh.
was going through tubes quickly. He was blowing speakers. There's and you're playing more, and it's much more high stress. They're being rattled around on the road. In road cases, they're being loaded in, loaded out.
Yeah.
So every day, I was having to call Dr. Z or Voodoo Labs or Robert Keeley or Bill Crook or whoever it was to have them explain how to do something. So it was like to
Yeah.
fix an amp or whatever it was, or
Right.
rewiring a guitar. And so yeah, so I did that, and Brad was kind enough to let me play play some also. So like when we would play the
Yeah.
Opry or we would do television and stuff like that, I would play with the band because it wasn't like a guitar tech was really needed. And that was just kind of and sometimes I would do switching from on stage. So I'd be playing
Hmm.
mandolin and I'd have like a little switcher underneath me. And so I would do his effects changes during the TV show, from while I played mandolin on stage.
Yeah. Right.
And so, yeah, we did kind of things like that. And then it just got to the point where um, well, one, I found that handling guitars all day and doing that, it was like I wasn't. My chops were just going to hell, and I
Yeah.
just didn't want to really play much because I had my hands on guitars all the time, but it wasn't playing them.
Yeah.
And you're stretching strings, you're repairing stuff, and then also, when are you going to play a gig?
Yeah.
Uh, so that was one strike against that job, as it were.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was that Brad had this. He and his longtime manager had a split that was difficult to say the least,
Mm.
and Brad basically had to kind of starve him out. So we stopped playing shows, and all of us were on. So I'm on salary. Everyone
Yeah.
with Brad was on and still is on salary. He's
Right.
a great guy. Even during COVID, he took care of his guys, kept them on salary, while other
Correct.
people fired their band and everyone else at the beginning of
Yeah.
COVID. He kept them on salary. But so we didn't play any. We played like 10 shows in 6 months, which normally we did about 100 shows a year.
Yeah.
And so then when he starved out the manager enough because he wasn't getting his percentage, well then there was like a buyout on top of that. And all of a sudden, he
Mm.
told William Morris, "It's like book every gig that you can." And so then we did
Oh my God.
we did over 100 shows in less than 6 months.
Oh my gosh.
And every day the logistics were just a nightmare because again they booked everything they could last minute. So
Mm.
it's like we would have times where we were doing a show in Palm Springs, and then the next day we're in Virginia Beach, and we have to take a
Wow.
red eye flight. So one of the gigs had to be backlined. and then the other one was the the regular 18 wheeler and crew and everything. And so it was just a really crazy time. Now it was
Yeah.
necessary in his career, but it was like
Yeah.
that was kind of it for me, because it was kind of like I
Yeah.
was already kind of leaning toward I didn't want to continue to be a guitar tech, and then when you're gone for 6 months straight, and it was just like there were days. I mean, sometimes there'd be 4 or 5 days in a row where I couldn't take a shower, where I didn't, and I was just, and it was like, and it was the middle of summer. We're doing rodeo, so I'm just caked with stuff, and I'm just getting into my bunk, and my bunk's getting worse and worse and worse. Again, this sounds like woe is me or something like that.
Yeah.
And again, it wasn't like I was having some horrible, horrible time or something like that. It was like there were a lot of fun things going on there too, but it was just, I just knew that it was like, this is not what I want to do long term. This
Yeah.
is not, this is not the right fit for me. I've
Yeah.
learned a lot. And of course, I really loved working with Brad, but that wasn't the right fit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I gave my notice, and,
Yeah.
and then, I helped find Chad Weaver, that another
Yeah.
Belmont guy that
Hmm.
ended up eventually taking over for me, and
Right.
so
It's
that gets you up pretty far,
yeah, for
and
real.
yeah,
And and the Brad Paisley thing, is kind of a connection between us and whatnot. But what a lot of people don't get to see and understand about him is how much he takes care of his guys and really cares about his circle stays small.
yeah.
And if you're in that circle, he is all about taking care of his guys, and doing going over and above and beyond. Because I mean, I think back, like Justin Williamson he was at Belmont. He was a year younger than me,
Yep,
and Justin got the fiddle gig with Brad. And Justin has never played with another artist ever in his entire career since 1998, which
exactly.
is that is literally unheard of for any track touring musician, but he jumped in, and Justin was one of the guys that he put on salary. And that it speaks volumes about a guy like Paisley, and him trying to do things the right way, and do it a little different than other people had done it, because he wanted good people in his circle. He wanted the right people in his circle. And when you take care of your people that way, they tend to hang around a long time.
Yeah.
But what's funny is, so I was working at EMI Publishing in the studio as an assistant or intern, whatever term you want to use, for probably 4 or 5 years. So like after Paisley graduated Belmont, I think it was like 95, 96, he signed a pub deal with EMI.
Yep.
So it was like the perfect storm for a guy like me, guitar player. I love guitar, and had heard about Brad. And so Brad and Frank would basically rent out the basement studio at EMI. If anybody's listening and you remember the EMI studio, it was in this basement.
I
These
remember.
crazy rock, yeah, these crazy rock walls
Yeah.
around. There's a Trident 80B console with 2-inch analog tape machine. And so I got to kind of be a fly on the wall during a lot of that early days process of demoing stuff with Frank and Brad. And, that was like the Me Neither days. Like, Me Neither is still one of the most incredible guitar songs ever to me,
I,
you
I
know?
love it. Yeah, I love that tune, and I love it when when he'll pull it out of the out of the ether. He'll pull it out and bring it
Yeah.
back into the set every once in a while, or at least do it in sound check or something like that. And I'm like, I love that song. Yeah,
Yeah. That it's still crazy to me that I was able to be there while they were demoing that. Not even the track that made the record, just
yeah.
the demo, and what still is burned in my brain, and what most people don't understand about the process of Brad and Frank. Okay, the combo of Brad and Frank, and I know you were there in a bunch of the sessions as well, but they are extremely meticulous about literally everything. Brad's tone, mic placements, mic choice, all the things. And I will never forget. I think it was a. They were searching for the perfect vocal mic. Okay, and I believe what happened was they rented every every U87 in Nashville, they had carted over to EMI, and Brad sang on every one of them. I think it was to the tune of like 20 or 30 microphones that they had. And Frank wrote down the serial number of the one, like they found the magic one. It might not have been a U87, but in my mind, I think it was a U87. But that's how meticulous the process was with Brad and Frank. And, it still is to this very day. And it shows up on the records. It shows a lot about their work ethic and all those things. And I'll never forget. And you can help me with the timeline here. So, like, Brad found the black telly that he thought was black, right?
Okay.
But it was actually the pink Paisley. When he stripped off, they were going to strip off the paint, and they figured out it was the pink Paisley, and then he decided, hey, I'm going to roll with that. At one point, at a session at EMI, he comes in with that guitar, and highlight of my life, got to play that guitar. He was like, dude, check this out, and hands me the guitar, and I'm like, this is crazy. So he tells me the whole story. But what still weirds me out to this very day, and it doesn't weird me out, it's just hilarious. Brad was always a tinkerer with gear, right? So like the rack that he would bring into the studio to record with, I don't know if you remember it,
Oh, I did.
but it was like this janky box
Yeah.
that he had like hand wired and like tinkered with all these things. And but
Yeah.
he was searching after a tone. Like he wanted Brad Paisley's guitar tone to be known around the world. As soon as you hear the first three notes of whatever he's playing, you know exactly who it is. And they chased after that with amps. I believe they ordered a vintage AC30 that got shipped from England over at that time. And that's what he was tracking with in the studio. And it's just funny that I remember how crazy his rig was as far as effects. It's just this box with a bunch of wires running everywhere, and nobody had any. He was the only guy who knew exactly how everything was wired at
Yeah.
the time. But they and I guess that's my one Brad Paisley story, I guess. But he's an incredible player, incredible guy. It was I think both of us will echo this in the fact that it was really cool to be around him and see his development and all the things. And it's just super cool to say that we know him. And he had such a huge impact on the guitar world, country music, all the things. Yeah, and I can't even imagine. He's so meticulous. I know that would have been crazy to be tech and figure out when he went to all the Dr. Z amps and the Keeley stuff, all the switchers. My mind hurts just thinking about all the stuff that I know that he had in his brain. He was thinking of all these things, and he was like, okay, I gotta be able to tell Zach what it exactly is that I want. And then you had to translate, all these things that are going on in his mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, that's super cool that you were able to be there and be a part of all that, kind of on the front end of what he was doing. And somebody like you who he trusted to know, like, Zach's going to take care of him, whether he knows how to do it or not. Zach's going to figure
I'll
it out.
figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
But
It was a fantastic experience, and yeah, it was very challenging, and it was very stressful because you know his guitar playing and his tone and his critical ear and everything
yeah,
at such a high level that I mean, I just remember praying before every show. It's like, dear God, please let nothing go wrong, because the thing was is that the guitar is such a security blanket for him. And it's like,
mm,
he's such a great entertainer. And
yeah,
and he has all these great songs. He's a great singer and stuff, but he is the guitar is such his security blanket that if anything goes wrong with it, it's kind of a hiccup. And so then
yeah,
it's like he kind of
hmm
has to recover from it. And I get it. I get it.
yeah,
Because also, people don't, unless you fronted a band, especially in front of like more than a club. If you've been, if you're in front of like thousands of people and you're the focus of it, it's like
hmm
it's a ton of pressure. So I mean, as much
yeah,
pressure or stress I was under, he was under more than that.
yeah,
And so it would just be hard, when things went wrong, because
yeah,
one, you didn't want to have anything to do with, kind of there being a speed bump in the show. You
Yeah,
want everything just to go smoothly. But
sure.
to contrast that, after I left Brad, I started writing for Vintage Guitar Magazine,
Hmm.
and I thought that I could write enough to make a living, but I couldn't. And so I was kind of doing some. So I was back to doing some playing and doing
Yeah.
some like I would doing some guitar tech stuff for like Brent Rowan and some
Hmm.
other studio guys here in town. I did some work for Frank Rogers, doing some kind of teching, engineering kind of stuff for him, guitar related things.
Yeah.
And I ended up, well, I met my wife and I knew I wanted to get married and I knew I needed more money. And the
Yeah.
fastest way to make money was to go back out on the road as a guitar tech. And
Yeah.
so I did a short period of time with Terry Clark because Chad Weaver had worked for her
Hmm.
like in the early 2000s, late 90s. And so he called me up and said, "Hey, can you do this?" And so I did some shows with them, but it was they were real nice to me, but that was kind of its own weird situation because she had married her road manager who was a man,
Yeah.
and it was like then later on she would come out as being gay,
Yeah.
and it was this weird thing where it was like, and I think her mom had cancer, and so it was like every night she and the rest of the guys were just getting blitzed drunk. I
Mm.
mean, just like, and I was the only guy on the bus sitting there waiting for everyone to get done to come in at 3 o'clock in the morning on the bus and wake me up because I'm the only one in there,
Yeah.
and it was just kind of like, they were, Terry was super nice to me. She's, great person, but it was like the situation was not what I wanted to be part of. And
Yeah.
so Carrie Underwood's people ended up contacting me because Chad
Hmm.
Weaver had also recommended me to them. And
Yeah.
so they were going to do Saturday Night Live, and Chad Weaver couldn't do it. So my first gig as a tech for Carrie Underwood was to go fly up and do Saturday Night Live. And so
Crazy.
that was a fun thing. And so then I ended
Yeah.
up, being able to leave Terry, go with Carrie, and I worked for her for probably 6 to 8 months, and
Hmm.
it was just a cakewalk because all of a sudden, you're working for the band instead of the artist, and so
Yeah.
it was just so much easier
Yeah, for
because
sure.
it's like they didn't have the complex rigs, they didn't have, and again, it was kind of like I almost felt a little guilty because I was used to this like really major, kind of, and because also there's some acclaim and such in doing that and working a rig like that. But
Yeah.
so then all of a sudden you had guys with amps and pedal boards, and a couple of guitars, and you're just kind of making sure they're okay and doing
Hmm.
some string changes and stuff like that, just setting things up. And so
Yeah.
did that for a little while, and then I started working for Truetone. So
Right.
yeah,
And so as most people that know you, kind of know you're infamous for the Ask Zack video series,
yeah,
which has become wildly popular over the years, and it has tons to do with, your knowledge of guitars and history of guitars and history of guitar tech and amps and all the things. Um, Tell me a little bit about kind of the vision behind that. I know it got started from some articles that you were kind of writing and had an idea, and then shifting into the video series.
yeah.
Kind of share a little bit about the Ask Zack series and your vision for that and how that got started.
Well, it started off as a column in Vintage Guitar Magazine, and it was this thing where when uh, if I remember correctly, it was when Ward Meeker, the editor of Vintage Guitar, was interviewing Brad. And this was while I was working for Brad.
Mhm.
Apparently, you know, he would ask Brad some questions about the rig, and at that point, I was building his rigs and stuff, and so there was a couple times where he said, "Well, I don't know, you're going to have to ask Zach." And
That's where the name came from, huh?
I think so. I think that's
Yeah.
where the name came from. And then
Yeah.
they asked me if I would do a column, and it was named Ask Zack. And
Yeah.
so I started doing that in 2004. And and it just, I did that, and then I started writing. Uh, I did my first interview I ever did was with this guy that wasn't really known well in Nashville yet, but was kind of coming up, and I liked him, and his name was Tom Bukovac. So I did the
Oh
very
my
first
gosh.
interview with Book, and
Yeah.
that was in 2005. And so it was just
Wow.
like a one page, thing on him, like in the front of the magazine. And and then I started doing full blown like big interviews, and I interviewed like Richard Bennett and Brent Rowan, and I interviewed
Hmm.
Brad, and I interviewed uh, you know bunch of other cats, and that kind of kept going, and I'd started working for Truetone, and what happened was the pandemic is what really changed things. Well, actually, a little bit before that, I
Yeah.
think I think there were a combination of things that happened with me and Vintage Guitar Magazine. I think maybe my work, and I'm trying to be understanding and kind here in this. I think perhaps my work was not. They weren't happy with what I was doing,
Mm.
and uh, and also I was pitching ideas to them that they weren't interested in. I was
Mm.
pitching, interviews or wanting to write about things that they didn't want to go there on, and they weren't interested. And
Okay.
so it kind of became clear that we were going to part ways at some point. And then they moved my column from the front of the magazine to the back of the magazine, which is not a good thing because
Yeah.
working for Truetone, I'm on the advertising committee. And so I know how all these decisions are made and what it costs and how you pay more to be in the front of the magazine to advertise
Yeah.
there than you do in the back. So being
Correct.
moved to the back of the magazine is not a good thing,
Yeah.
from being in the front. They had earlier removed my disembodied head because I had my disembodied head and then it said Ask Zack. They removed the disembodied head, and then they quadrupled my word count and kept the pay the same. And it was kind of
Mm.
like, okay, it was like this, non-verbal way of showing me the door.
Yeah.
And, at the time, it really hurt,
Yeah.
because I felt like, because at this point I'd been writing for the magazine for what, 15 years or something like that. But it ended up being the greatest thing ever, because one of the things I've really learned in life, and this is one of the most important lessons that I can, transfer to anyone else, is that when things are going crappy, when you're unhappy, that's when there's the opportunity for real growth and change in your life, because you're not
For
going to
sure.
do anything when you're happy. When
Yeah.
you're unhappy, the important thing is like try not to go into a complete depression funk, which,
Yeah.
I've done that at times.
It
It's
happens.
like,
Yeah.
okay, say, okay, this is going bad. What opportunity have I been saying no to because I was happy writing for Vintage Guitar Magazine? And
Yeah.
so with that changing, because I'd had a friend named Austin Skinner that I sometimes will play gigs with, and I've been friends. In fact, I'm going to play with him tomorrow night in Nashville at the Supper Club.
Yeah.
Um, he and I have been friends for 30 years. He kept like using his phone and just taping me doing stuff, and then he would post it on YouTube, and and I would just be talking about different things, and finally, at that point, I decided, okay, I'm going to start a YouTube thing. And so, also, Keith Williams, who does 5 Watt World, which is a very successful YouTube channel, he's probably got
Hmm.
270,000 subscribers, and he has a lot of very
Yeah.
successful videos with like, a million views and things like that.
Hmm.
Keith was a fan of the interviews that I'd done for the True Tone Lounge and the stuff I'd done, maybe the stuff I'd done in Vintage Guitar Magazine, but
Yeah.
he excuse me, he had contacted me, and I told him, I said, I want to do a channel. I said, but I don't know how to do it. And he
Yeah.
said, well, just use your phone. All you need is your phone. And he said, and just start doing it. And just know that you're going to hate the first episodes that you do. You're going to hate it
Yeah.
because you're going to learn so much from them, and you just have to get over yourself. And
Yep.
so that was amazing advice. So, I mean, Keith
Yep.
Williams is still a friend and a collaborator, and we'll work on videos together at times, and I'll do live streams with him and things like that. And
Hmm.
like, I owe him a lot because he really, because you can get trapped in the thing of like, okay, well, I've got to go buy all this gear. I've got to go spend all this money. I've got to learn how to use this software. I've got to do this and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So all I did was I had all this junk in my head from years and years and years of collecting information and being, crazy about gear. And so all I had to do was turn the phone on and start recording myself talking about different topics. I was
Yep.
just downloading. And
Yeah.
so all I did was download for about the first 70 episodes. I didn't have to do
Yeah.
any prep work, nothing. I just said, okay, I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to play one of the licks. I'm going to do whatever. And
Yeah.
that's what I did. And so then, of course, the
Hmm.
hard work, started coming later where I actually had to learn different things and do more
Yeah.
research. But in the beginning, and and I was releasing like I think I was releasing 2 episodes a week in the beginning because I didn't want someone to come hit my channel and only see like 2 episodes.
Yeah.
So I had at least 10 to 20 episodes before I really started pushing on other social media like, hey, come follow me, come watch these episodes and things. And that way
Yeah.
they'd be like, oh, well, there's not just 2 shows. He's got like a
Right.
couple episodes. And so
Hmm.
the other thing that really helped me was the pandemic started. I started the show in January of 2020, and the pandemic, started in March, and so everyone was stuck, and so I was having a lot of success,
Yeah.
and I was able to quickly monetize the channel, and I was quickly able to make more money doing YouTube than I had writing for Vintage Guitar Magazine, and I was
Yeah.
able to politely say thank you for the work we've done together, but it's time for me to go, and
Yeah.
and it was nice because I mean that's the yeah. So it was a
Yeah.
good it had been a good situation. I was grateful to them, but obviously it was time for me to move on. So I found
Yeah.
a good situation, and it's been great because Ask Zack has you know it's made me somewhat more desirable as a guitar player because people have seen
Hmm.
me, and then it's like I bring something to the table if I go play a gig.
Right.
Like here you have someone that he's going to announce, and so if I go play a gig at places, there's a decent chance that some at least 1 or 2 people are going to come to the show to see me, and they want to
Yeah.
talk to me and they want to see guitars and stuff like that. It's not like I'm going to have a
Yeah.
crowd of people, but it's like like if I go out and play in Vegas with my buddy Austin, it's like I might end up with 2 or 3 people coming, during the week just to come out and say, hey, maybe 3 or 4, and
Yeah.
that's, you know, not too
That,
shabby. So
yeah.
it's
That's
fun.
killer, man. Yeah. I love it. And I love the way that the progression of how, the Ask Zack YouTube channel and video series and all those things kind of came about. It sounds like a natural progression if you kind of, that's the next thing that you needed to do with all the knowledge that I know you have in your head. And it's, when I can't, it's crazy that you had like 60 episodes like in your head.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild, but it's, and it's kind of the same way for me. It's just starting, like just putting the camera in front of your face and just doing the first one, is what the same advice that I got. It's the same advice that you got. Just stick the camera in front of your face and talk about the thing that's in your brain and get the first one done. Is kind of a launching pad, so to speak, to start the content creation, and we're doing more of that here as
Yeah.
well.
It's like, it's like getting up on the high, diving board, and
Hmm.
it's one of those things like, okay, are you just going to jump off and do it? Or are you going to pain every step going up the ladder? And are you going to, psych yourself out almost to the point that you get completely scared before you jump off and you think about turning around and stuff like that? It's just one of those things where it's like, you just have to do it. And you just have to
Yep.
realize that it's like you're going to learn a lot because you're going to watch it
Hmm.
and you're going to hate it, and it's okay. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
and then so it's like, there's been part of me that's wanted to just delete the first couple episodes of Ask Zack that I've done because it's like there's a bunch of things that I hated, but it's like they're important, and it's okay. And if some point I want to unlist them or whatever like that, I may, or
Yeah.
yeah, there comes a point where it's like Keith Williams has started actually redoing some of his episodes. Like some of his first
Interesting.
episodes, he has unlisted them and then redone it. So of course it has to start over,
Yeah.
but you know, but
Just a better presentation of the content. Yeah, I
exactly.
understand that for sure. Man, I don't want to hold you up too much longer, but I do want to ask you this before we sign off. Zach is working at Truetone, there in headquarters in Franklin, I believe. Is that correct?
Well, they're just
Uh,
south of there in Spring Hill. Yeah,
got you, Spring Hill. And I kind of wanted to pick your brain about Truetone for a minute.
yeah,
As far as guitar tech and uh, well, and all the things available in the guitar world these days, from amp modeling to guitar pickups to all the things, man. What if there's one thing that True Tone has going on right now? Is there one specific thing that really you're excited about that True Tone has going on right now? Anything you think you off the top
yeah.
of your head you could share?
The thing that I'm proud of and proud to be a part of True Tone is the fact that we were the first company to release a digital power supply brick. So
Hmm.
before that, things were like the original Voodoo Lab, which had a big, heavy transformer in it, and
Hmm.
it put off a lot of heat, and it was inefficient. And basically, you could get maybe 100 milliamps out of each output.
Right.
And so all of a sudden, Strymon and all these other companies started making pedals that needed more power than that. And basically, the Voodoo Lab, was kind of useless. And
Mm.
so we were the first ones to come to the table with an isolated brick power supply that could put out so much more power because it was using digital switching technology instead of the old transformer.
Right.
And I think that was that was a big huge step. And then Strymon followed suit, about a year after us with their own power supply that was using the same type of technology. And that, again, that's not saying it was a copy or anything like that, because we actually contacted Strymon saying, "Hey, we put this out on the market, and we want to send some to you, to check out." And they politely
Test
said,
drive.
"No, no, no, thank you." And then we understood when they when it was like a couple months later, they started being press releases about their power supplies. And so,
Gotcha.
yeah, so yeah, I think very proud of the fact that we did that. And then just in the next month, we're going to be releasing kind of the new hopped up, hot rodded, versions of those,
Mm.
just the latest and greatest, that have even more power, because that's the thing. It's kind of ends up being the power wars, because um, your enemy is heat, and
Mm.
so you're trying to produce more and more power without producing a ton of heat,
Right.
and because the the multi-effect modeler units are huge power hogs, especially things like a
Mm.
Line 6 HX
Yeah.
or different eventide, things. Those sometimes will take 1,000 milliamps or more at startup. So you're having to make power supplies that can just put out more and more and more power. And
Right.
so, so that's what we've done recently. We're going to be coming out with a CS11 that it has 11 outputs on the front, and then it actually has a 12th output on the back that can power expansion units. And the expansion units are also fully isolated. It's not like, oh, you've got an expansion unit and it's a daisy chain or something where it's not ground isolated. So all of them are ground. So there's like a 5 called the XP5, and then there's one called the XP8 that has 8 outputs, and they have a ton of power. So then you could have one of these boards with like 20 pedals on it and stuff like that, and you use the CS11 along with the like the XP8, and you could power up all that stuff quietly and safely. So I'm very proud of those and excited about them, and even those little expansion units, you can use those by themselves with like a floor wart or wall wart to power up a pedal board, and they're
Mm.
nice and lightweight and fairly priced. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm proud of that.
Well, Zach, man, thanks so much for being on this episode of the Studio 101 podcast. Man, I sincerely appreciate your time and all of your knowledge and wisdom for this episode. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of people that's going to take away a lot of great things from this episode. And we got to get together sometime, man. So when I'm in town, I'm definitely going to hit you up.
Yes, yes. We'll grab coffee, lunch, dinner, a show, whatever it is. But thank you so much for having me. This was a ton of fun. Great to catch up with you, Brad. And we'll see you next time.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much again, Zach. And this has been another episode of the Studio 101 Recording Podcast. We will see you on the next episode.